Hey everybody, my name is Brandon Adams. This is Jeff Sintel. Welcome into Before the Hedges, presented by Kroger. Our weekly look at what's going on with UGA recruiting. And these days it seems like there is a lot, both maybe on the horizon in the future, and certainly in the recent past with a slew of commitments as of late. We'll try to touch on all of that throughout the course of our program here today, and we're glad to have you with that. We'll even take a deeper look later on at four-star offensive lineman Andrew Raym. We had our buddy Mike Johnson, the former All-American from Alabama, talk about what he likes as a former offensive lineman about Raym's game. We'll do that coming up. We'll hear from latest UGA commit, three-star receiver Cory Wren on today's program. But Jeff, before we get to any of that, next week is a huge day, and not just because I'm going to be on vacation, but also because you were on the opposite of vacation. You were on assignment and working Frisco, Texas for the opening, the biggest recruiting event of the summer. You'll be there covering it for Dog Nation. And in addition to the kind of the spectacle and the show that these recruiting events kind of are, this is also a unique opportunity for some of the UJ recruits who will be showcased in this event, because there are a few guys who are like right there on the bubble of maybe being 5 stars, and another big performance in the reps and the 7-on-7 stuff and everything that's going to go on may push a few of these guys kind of over that mark. And for Georgia fans who like collecting these 5-star recruits over the course of a recruiting cycle, the opening may give you a chance to add a few more without actually adding more commits. Just some of the guys that Georgia already has, they might be reevaluated.
Yeah, I think when you look at Georgia and you look at maybe the opening storylines for the Bulldogs and Dog Nation, first of all, I think there's 17 guys that are undecided with the Bulldogs. Those are the folks that everybody wants to read about a lot, that have a chance of joining the class that will be there at the opening finals there at the World Training Headquarters of the Dallas Cowboys. And there's a packed list for you,
let's see some of these names here. We'll talk more about these throughout the show. The running backs, Milton and Evans, Keely Ringo, that's a name we've talked about a lot. Justin Flo, a guy that we've been curious about here that I have to admit you have never really been all that high on the chances of him going to Georgia. We'll see where that goes. The tight ends are going to be there. Noah Sewell, the young man that's turned a lot of heads here as of late.
A lot of heads.
Jervin Dexter, who's a Florida flip.
Whoa. Hold
on, I didn't mean to say that.
Sometimes Brandon.
That's not what I meant to say. A Florida commit. It only rolls off the tongue that it might be a flip because Georgia has seemingly had its way with the Gators, but that was not intentional on my part. But Dexter is a guy that has been pledged to Florida that has seemingly opened up his recruitment a bit, and Georgia would be in the mix there. And I guess you can take a look at this, kind of tell us what you think about this list here.
So you got the running backs there, you got the tight ends there. I'm going to come back to that name, Noah Sewell. That's the guy that was catching passes at the Rivals camp this week. 260 pounds. He was covering guys. Now he's an inside linebacker at Georgia, 260 pounds. You see the running back options there. You see the tight end options. You see the defensive back options, and you see a couple of defensive linemen there as well. And the other thing we got to talk about, besides these 17 targets, it's the scope of our show today. They're the 6 or so commitments that will also be there. And really, Brandon, this is showcase. This is money time, getting your bag time for these guys. You look at these names, Kimber, Tate Ratledge, Marcus Rosemy, those first 4, you throw Carson Beck in there as well. Those are the guys I feel that can put together the resumes against the elite competition in the nation. At the star, they could add an extra star. I think Ratledge and Rosemy are right there. Kimber's right there. And Carson Beck is also a guy that could add the 5th star among all those dudes.
You tweeted out something the other day from Carson Beck about the team that he's going to be on the opening. He's got another, relatively well-known quarterback kind of on his roster with him. He's got some guys to throw to. I think Darnell Washington, for instance, is on Carson Beck's team out there. I mean, it's all elite players, so the 7-on-7 teams will divide it up in kind of an elite way. And yet, when I looked at the makeup of that team, and I'm sure you can speak more to this, I was thinking, much the same way we saw Jake Fromm really kind of become the alpha of that event heading into his conclusion of his recruiting cycle in February of 2017. Beck, with this team that he has a chance to be a part of here, he has a chance to, kind of outplay some of these guys and also, make that name. I think you're right on the money when it comes to Rosemy and Ratledge, but it's really Beck with the ball in his hand during some of this 7-on-7 work that I'm also kind of fascinated by.
I think he's got a shot to make a real move, and you want to talk about things that Brandon can't help it with that Florida flip thing. I can't help but kind of be very eyebrow raised emoji when you look at the ratings right now and you see that there's 7 quarterbacks rated higher than Carson Beck right now in the 2020 class. This is a chance. 13 out of the top 25 quarterbacks in the country will be there. If Carson Beck looks like, which I think he will look like, one of the two best quarterbacks there this week at the Elite 11 and then at the opening, I think he zooms up that board a lot.
Yeah, I mean, if I wanted to make the most pro Carson Beck assessment possible, I know people say, well, this is a Georgia-centric recruiting show. What would you expect someone else to say? And that's certainly a fine response to this. But the most pro Carson Beck assessment you could have is, his status has been earned because of what he did against 11-on-11 competition, against full contact Friday night in the state of Florida, especially with a big run during the postseason. So, for these other guys who make a name for themselves when everybody's wearing shorts and shells and, things along those lines, the status that Beck has gained because it happened against real competition in real games, that means a lot to me. And I don't know that guarantees that Beck will be a success at the college level. None of these guys are really full guarantees. But the way in which that Beck has earned his reputation up to this point, that means something to me.
Yeah, I think with Beck, you'll look at him and he didn't do all of the dog and pony show circuits, which kind of equates to that rating right now. The thing that'll help him is he'll have a couple of days to acclimate in the Elite 11, and then he'll have a couple of days, at least 1.5 days, at least one full day of working with his team. And Brandon, you mentioned Darnell Washington that would be on his team wave there in Texas at the Star, but he also has a certain running back out of Clovis, California that he will be throwing to as well. Nice little synergy potentially there for that. And you look at those names going back to it, and I think to me, Rosemy and Ratledge and then Kimber are almost knocking on the door of 5-star status. And then another thing to think about there, we were talking about this in our pre-show meeting, the pure 24/7 sports rating, Arik Gilbert, Darnell Washington, guys like that. There are only currently 12 pure 24/7 sports 5-star prospects right now at this time as well.
Nick BR01, you mentioned Rosemy a moment ago. Nick BR01, who was watching us on YouTube, says that he thinks that Rosemy will be a 5-star when it's all said and done. I know Rosemy's impressed some at a recruiting event here this week, and there's been some online chatter about that. And I know that you also feel like on the heels of really just recently announcing his Georgia pledge, that you said this in the show probably 3-4 weeks ago. We've played the audio on Dog Nation Daily, I think now a couple of times, that you think, given number 6 receiver in the country, you think he's essentially knocking on the door of being a 5-star as it is.
Yeah, you've got Ratledge and you've got Ratledge and Rosemy, the two R guys right now, 2 Rs. They're both top 40 prospects already on the composite. And I think Ratledge will put it down there. There won't be all the elite tackles there either. I think Ratledge will soon see his name and worth move up from the nation's number 5 offensive tackle to number 2 or number 3 in the class pretty rapidly after this camp, if he can do what he's expected to do. And Rosemy's right there as well, going to go against elite competition. Just showed he can pick him up and put him down and haul him in at the Rivals event over this week. So Rosemy, he's just not right there knocking on the door as well.
It's Before the Hedges presented by Kroger. Jeff mentions Rosemy, the wide receiver. Let's kind of keep that theme going here for a moment and talk about a guy that we have mentioned a few times before who's now made his college decision. A.J. Henning, the 4-star wide receiver from the state of Illinois, has made his selection. You'll see this on your screen. Henning has chosen Michigan. All along, it was thought that Michigan was among his top favored candidates here, but he did visit Georgia, had seemingly a relationship with the Dogs, and yet now he's going to go to Ann Arbor. Georgia, for what it's worth, also took a commitment last week from another receiver, or a guy that's going to play receiver in college, and that's the 3-star from Louisiana, Cory Wren. Jeff, sometimes for the average fan, I'll speak as a fan here for a moment, it's difficult to decipher on stuff like this. And there you see Co-Savage himself, Cory Wren, with the Georgia uniform on. Is this more of an issue of Georgia favoring Wren over Henning? Is this more of an issue of Henning favoring Michigan over Georgia, so therefore Georgia looked elsewhere? There's obviously a lot to like about both these players, and I'm sure both programs will be happy to have the guy that they got. But how do you process and make sense of something like this when Georgia seemingly pretty quickly worked its way in with Cory Wren after taking some time to have hosted A.J. Henning? What went down here?
So I feel that Henning was a very strong candidate to join the class at Georgia. He's that speed guy. He checks off those skills, those requisite skills for another burner in the wide receiver room at Georgia. I just think he was maybe not as decided in his walk about where he wanted to be as Cory Wren was. Cory Wren had his notion in mind that he wanted to be a Bulldog maybe I'd say 10 to 14 days prior to him making his decision go public. Henning still had his official visit to do at Michigan, so it was just an option where there was a time where I thought A.J. Renning could very likely be in the class at Georgia. Mom even gave her blessing on his decision out on social media, because a couple of visits that A.J. Henning had went very well. But in the end, I think it came down to Michigan, a lot of hometown, a lot of local ties. I think his father and his family grew up Michigan fans. And
just a Big Ten country kid to begin with, given the fact of where he lives.
And the other thing you got to think about, and this is going to sound like greed is good, Brandon, if Georgia needs to add a speed guy to this class, they want to add the guy that runs a 4.31 rather than a 4.44. These guys are both really smoking awesome, amazingly fast, but Cory Wren is more likely that speed burner guy, scare defenses to death, and maybe A.J. Henning, thus his ratings is a lot higher as a receiver, is more the pure natural receiver at this point.
James Bryant says, for once, we are stacked at wide receiver. If we can't go deep now, we have a problem somewhere. And that's one of the things I said when Rosemy first committed, and now you add Wren to the mix, on top of what Georgia already has and what it did in the 2019 class, recruiting the wide receiver position better than it had in a decade. It's easy to forget that up until this most recent recruiting cycle came to a close, Georgia just flat out wasn't recruiting receiver at the same rate it was recruiting some of the other positions, offensive line, running back, linebacker, spots like that. Georgia just wasn't recruiting the wide receiver position the same way. But with Rosemy and with Pickens from a year ago, Blaylock from a year ago, and you'll factor in guys like Justin Robinson and Cory Wren somewhere in this conversation too, it is true that I think this really the untold story of the last, I'll call it recruiting cycle and a half, because we're still in the midst of the 2020 campaign right now. The real untold story is how much Georgia under Cortez Hankton has upgraded its wide receiver recruitment.
Yeah, Hankton was influential in Pickens. Blaylock was a decided guy. Micaiah Tongue, another Louisiana guy. And really quickly, Georgia's wide receiver room is having some Cajun spice to it, maybe like Brandon's favorite sandwich at Popeyes. You got a Micaiah Tongue, you got a Cory Wren in there. Those guys are both from the boot state, and they're already ready and happy and looking forward to showing out for Hankton. Hankton's a New Orleans native. He has deep-tied roots in that state, and those are paying off right now for Georgia with some big-time talent.
Antoine Gray wants to talk about Keely Ringo on Facebook. Antoine, we'll get to Ringo here in just a moment. Before that, though, let me let you hear a little bit from Cory Wren. We played some Cory Wren audio on the show last week. You've caught up with him again since then, subsequent to his commitment to UGA. And, boy, it seems like Wren is feeling pretty good right now of the status of that commitment. He's liking life as a dog. Here is what Cory Wren told you.
It's been exciting. I felt a big relief off my shoulder. Like that my recruitment is over. But it's exciting though. The fans are awesome. I stay in contact with the fans as much as possible. I even gave some of them my game tag. We played a game a little bit. I met I talked on the phone with a few of them even. But only player I've been in contact with is Marcus. He also won the 5-star camp not too long ago, so I congratulated him on that. But yeah, it's been nice though. I'm really enjoying it. I'm having fun.
So when he says game tag, that's like PlayStation. They put the headsets on, they play the games together. Is that what that is?
It's like a gamer tag. So like if yours was Flip the Gators 999, you could say.
And that's what it would be.
Hey guys, let's meet up and let's play a game of Fortnite or Madden or whatever. My gamer tag is Flip the Gators 999, and then they can link up with you and friends, and you guys can play together in the same game or arena at the same time.
So he's certainly seemingly enjoying himself. My suggestion would be let's not call Cory Wren anymore. Let's let him have a little measure of privacy. That's my guess. That probably Kirby Smart probably would say the same thing as well. Now, not you. You're a sanctioned reporter, but just random fans talking to Cory Wren on the phone. That seems. Can we give him a little more privacy than that?
I think the way that happens, Brendan, is the fans reach out and he wants to, be loved by the fans and make a name. And the guy's like, hey, here's my gamer tag. And then maybe they're talking to set up what time they're going to go play. Maybe they're going to take on an all-Florida commit team in Fortnite and get a victory royale.
Something else that Cory Wren had to say, really continuing to talk about how his relationship with coaches like Cortez Hankton played a big role in his decision. When he looks back on how it became UGA, it's names like that keep coming up over and over. Here is more from Wren on that topic.
Well, before I went public with it, I got on the phone with Coach Hankton, and I got back on the phone with Coach Cooley. They was just telling me, you come into a great place, you're in good hands, we go develop you, and welcome to the family. And that's when it really hit me. This the school that I'm given my 4-year plan to. You know, it's not of my 40-year plan to, not my 4-year plan. And, you know, it really hit me around when I got on the phone with them. You know, I was just excited. You know, I'm happy. I'm at peace with my decision. You know, I'm standing on my word. I'm committed. I don't plan to decommit. I just plan to, you know, continue to work hard and continue to learn the game of football. Go there, be developed. You know, and standing on that.
Joel Moody in our Facebook comment section said that his gamer tag is Need a Natty. I think a lot of Georgia fans would like to have the same gamer tag. If we're talking gamer tags, that's going to be a pretty popular one right now. Need a Natty 23, Need a Natty 24, Need a Natty, a lot of Need a Natties in there.
What about Got a Natty 20? That would be fun too,
That'd be certainly nice to hear there as well. Look, here's my final topic on this, and then we're going to kind of get into Keely Ringo and a lot of these top targets after that. My final thought on this entire topic is A.J. Henning seemed there was a lot to like about him. He's at Michigan. Wish him well there. In terms of Cory Wren, admittedly, it wasn't all that long ago. I'd never even heard of Cory Wren. I'll certainly admit that to you readily here. And yet, getting a chance to hear your conversations with him a couple times now in a row on the last two editions of Before the Hedges presented by Kroger, I got to say, I really like this young man. I think that he is, seemingly a guy who's got his priorities in line. He seems to have the right attitude. I'm guessing that'll serve him well here in college. I have liked everything I've heard from Wren thus far.
I think Wren, to go back on the timeline, he took 2 unofficial visits to Georgia. I think when he took that one after his spring practice, after he got evaluated in spring practice by Hankton, that's the snake weekend. That's the weekend. I think from that point, he was already starting to feel himself like he wanted to be at Georgia.
Yeah, that's certainly an exciting thing to think about there. That is Jeff Sentell. My name's Brandon Adams. This is Before the Hedges presented by Kroger. We'll do top targets here in a moment. We'll tell you all you want to know about Keely Ringo, Kendall Milton, and everybody else involved with that. Before that, though, let me also tell you about my friends at Kroger, which has launched a Kroger Fuel VIP program. Now, listen to this. This is a great deal. It allows you to earn 2 fuel points on purchase instead of just 1. This is an even better deal than ever before. Enrollment's easy. You can either scan the barcode at checkout or you can go to this website, Kroger.com/fuelvip. Check that out, Kroger.com/fuelvip. The annual enrollment's just $40, and it's really worth the money because you get 2 fuel points for every dollar spent. Great stuff from our friends at Kroger. All right, we'll take a closer look at Andrew Raym, the 4-star offensive lineman, coming up in just a bit. Before that, though, time for top targets. As we take a look at the board, where it's ranked, these guys are, and kind of what could be next for a lot of these young men. And here on Before the Hedges presented by Kroger, my guess is the name number 1 on this list will be the same one that it's been now for quite some time. The 5-star cornerback out of the state of Arizona, who is knocking on the door of what he said was going to be a top 5 coming up here on June 27th. It's the 5-star cornerback Keely Ringo. I know Ringo's been turning a lot of heads as of late at a recruiting event here in the city of Atlanta. Blazing speed to go along with uncommon size from the cornerback position. I think a lot of Georgia fans say, I'll take that as a part of my 2020 class.
So 6'2", 205. I don't know what's the most, I guess, eyebrow-raising thing or most bug-eyed or Bugs Bunny-eyed type thing. Eyeballs reaction from Keely Ringo this week, number 1. I think the whole world learned that he's still 16 years old and he won't turn 17 until Thursday. Very interesting there. And then also, he was already the fastest man at this Rivals recruiting event last year, but then he puts up a 4.35 and a 4.36 laser times in the 40.
Laser time, big time speed.
On the hallowed ground of Mercedes-Benz Stadium, back-to-back, won the 40-time championship again. And again, folks, 6'2", 205. I often kid this fella right here that the insane, I wouldn't say insane, but the true devotion you had towards the 5-star corner, the holy grail 5-star corner that you thought was Tyson Campbell a couple years ago. This is the guy that was worth all that affection a couple years ago.
That's an exciting thing to think about. We'll look forward to seeing where things go with him next. The obvious expectation is that Georgia will be among his finalists, and we'll kind of see what the next step in Ringo's recruitment is after that. Name number 2 on the list, also a name that we've done a lot of talking about here, the 5-star running back, Kendall Milton. Now, Jeff, I'm going to do something here for a moment that, well, I wouldn't typically do, but I'm going to have to take a little bit of umbrage with Milton's father, Chris Milton. Now, listen, if I took true umbrage with him, I have to bring 7 guys with me because Chris Milton's a pretty tough-looking guy. But my biggest fear in the world is to have somebody film me coming out of like anesthesia or something like that. Listen, I say dumb stuff on the video all the time as it is. You put a little anesthesia in me, there's no telling what I would say. Here you see Kendall Milton's brother who recently had his wisdom teeth removed. And it's a really funny video. You should go to Chris Milton's Twitter account, at Father of Ballers. You can see the full thing. But there is a little bit of a nugget to unearth here. And we talked about this on Dog Nation Daily a bit today, and even had some fun with you chastising me for this with inside our Dog Nation chat yesterday. But look at Milton's brother here. Now that Bulldogs t-shirt is a Fresno State Bulldogs t-shirt, so don't make too much of that. But how about the Georgia armbands for the other son of Chris Milton here? I'm not telling you that means something, but I'm also not going to say it's nothing either, that a sibling to Kendall Milton has got the Georgia armbands on there. It means a little something, doesn't it?
So follow the armbands in the dentist chair. Follow the anesthesia here with...
Well, I've long said that gear can be misleading. I mean, Aubrey Solomon was dressed head to toe in Georgia gear, it seemed like, before he chose Michigan. You had Owen Pappoe walking around in true, like, Georgia sweatsuit the day before he committed to Auburn. So sometimes gear can be misleading, but when it's the brother of the recruit and it's an armband coming out of a little bit of a surgical procedure, maybe it means something.
Dentist chair. Remember, he wasn't on the Georgia official either. He did not make that one. He only made the LSU official visit. Yeah. So, and the other arm looked fairly clean of all other regalia from any other
no
program.
LSU, Ohio State, or Alabama there. The other stated finalists for Mr. Milton saw none of that.
I'm going to tell you this. I don't know whether that's the greatest thing, or the most revealing thing, or the most wonderful tale in the history of Dog Nation dentist chair anesthesia videos.
That may be our first. We've done a lot of weird things from a video standpoint here. I don't know that we've shown the brother of recruit in a dentist chair before. So we're breaking new ground here on Before the Hedges, presented by Kroger.
But I'm going to say this. That's not a bad thing.
Not a bad thing whatsoever. All right, name number 3. We should probably pick up the pace here just a little bit. But name number 3 in our list, top targets for the class of 2020. We showed you Keely Ringo. We showed you Kendall Milton. How about a Rick Gilbert, the 5-star? We'll call him a tight end, listed as an athlete on the recruiting services. Was most recently, in terms of an official visit, at Alabama. And now the world kind of waits to see what happens next.
Yeah, I think last week, if you guys get down in a forum, we kind of talked about that Eric Gilbert was in Athens on the heels of, right after that Alabama official. I know lots of people like to call it a secret visit. My personal, soapbox moment here on visits is guys are going to visit. It's not really, they visit, especially top targets, especially a guy that's been to Georgia so much. Gilbert's interesting. I think he's now coming around to the conclusion about what he wants to do with his decision process and his timeline. I remember speaking to him in April, and he said it was really big to him that he wanted to know about the tight end usage rate. Now, we didn't develop the acronym, but I think TEUR was something he was looking at. He wanted to know how much Georgia would use the tight end under James Cooley's new offense. He wanted to know what Jim Chaney and Tennessee was going to do in that offense up on Rocky Top. Well, here's what's happening. Tennessee has just removed that from the equation. They're straight recruiting him as a receiver. And he's feeling like now that he wants to wait and watch a lot of games, watch some games this year to see how all that's falling into place.
Bill Kelly says, how can we not be at the top of Rick Gilbert's list? And I kind of agree with Bill on this. Georgia's in the mix right now for a lot of elite athletes, 5-star type guys. Gilbert, to me, is a recruitment separate of anything else. This is a battle that Georgia needs to win. And I'm not telling you the class is a failure if you don't get him. I'm not going to say that. But this personal recruitment will be a failure and a big, gigantic L if Gilbert's wearing something else other than silver britches for his college career.
Yeah, I wonder how you'll think about that come February. I mean, what if Georgia ends up signing 7 or 8 5-stars and it's the greatest recruiting class ever Georgia's had, even better than the 2018 class? I know that will be a bottom line equation for a lot of people, but I'm kind of picking up what you're putting down a little bit. If Georgia, for whatever reason, no matter how great the class they have, if they lose another priority target in-state, I think that says something about Georgia, who still has yet to land the state's #1 overall prospect in any year under Kirby Smart.
Let me just do something really, really quick here. I think the issue is that if Gilbert were to choose another school, it furthers the negative recruiting that exists against Georgia. You don't want to go there, they don't throw the ball enough. The same way when Brian Brzee chooses Clemson over Georgia, you don't want to go there. They haven't had a defensive lineman drafted in X number of years. They don't develop their defensive lineman. When these would-be ball catchers, would-be defensive linemen and pass rushers when they choose other schools, they're simply furthering what has been the negative recruiting message against Georgia, and that does matter to me. I mean, listen, I'd love to tell you it's all sunshine and rainbows behind the scenes of recruiting. It is not. It is nasty and it's full contact. And a couple of the negative recruiting points against Georgia for some recruits, it does kind of stick a bit, and you need guys like Gilbert to help change that narrative.
I think what's going to happen eventually over the next 2 or 3 years is Georgia's going to remove a lot of those potential negative threads about D-line, about tight ends, about receivers. I mean, Marcus Rosemy is a guy that realizes Georgia doesn't throw the ball as much as he might like. He wouldn't be like a primary bell cow in the offense, but he was fine with it because it simply came down to it. Georgia was the best fit, and he felt the most comfortable there going to go play his college football. And I think in a perfect world, I think more recruits still, even though it does get a little sloppy and a little dirty, a lot of negative recruiting sometimes, I think eventually a lot of the elite recruits just decide, because everybody's catering to their every whim, I think they just decide that that's the best fit for them.
We had a 5-star defensive lineman at number 4 last week. Does he remain there? Yes, he does. Columbia's own Jordan Birch. Dogs went into enemy territory for the class of 2018 with Channing Tindall. Can they do it again in Columbia for Birch this go around?
Defensive lineman. I think Jalen Carter is going to check a lot of boxes for people about that elite defensive lineman, much like Trayvon Walker was in the 2019 class. But if Georgia could add Birch, question, if Georgia adds Birch here, and maybe Calvin comes along as well in this class, does this remove any of the stigma around Trey Scott?
Oh, that's over. It's on its way to being over right now because that's how much I like Jalen Carter from Georgia's standpoint. But you start adding the names you just mentioned, whatever concerns you had about defensive line recruiting, that is so over. That is so passe. There is dust on that hot take.
It's like last year's lost Easter egg or something like that.
For sure. So we'll see where things go with Birch, name number 5 on our list. Is it time to start talking offensive linemen as of yet? There are a couple of those on the board. No, we got to do running backs before we get there. Zachary Evans with Hughes from Houston, Texas. North Shore, which is always a confusing high school to me because I don't think Houston has any water, does it? Like, where is the shore? It's North Shore High School, right?
Yeah.
So where is the shore? There's no water in Houston. Nonetheless, Georgia's got bigger issues than Evans' high school name. We've seen on Twitter he was at Texas A&M. There were some media reports, including the Austin American Statesman, that he was at UT Austin for an unofficial visit before that. Honestly, it seems like this top 5's at least a top 7. It probably always was. From a fan standpoint, this one's feeling like a little bit more of a difficult needle to thread, I would have to say.
I would say needle to thread. I like that. I think really I'm just going to kind of break down what I see there, and I don't think it's a top 7. I think 2 teams have left his top 5, which would maybe likely be a school like Ohio, maybe an Ohio State, maybe definitely in Oklahoma there is one of those.
Yeah.
And I think Texas and Texas A&M are the ones that are kind of capitalizing on that.
Yeah, for sure. All right, next name on our list. We've talked about a couple running backs. We've showed you defensive linemen. We've done a whole lot else. Going to get this other tight end here, Darnell Washington out of Las Vegas, Nevada. You'll see him next week in Frisco, Texas. We don't hear as much from him just because of how far away he lives. That may be among the interviews that you may get a chance to do next week. One of the ones I'm most eager to hear from you on and hear from him on because we just don't hear as much from him.
Yeah, Darnell, I think he's going to take his official to Georgia for the Notre Dame game. Be interesting to see if he gets back to Georgia in late July for that Megapolis recruiting event they're going to have again.
He's also one of these guys that dropped like a top 38 not too long ago. I'm kind of curious to see if he's whittled that down. So.
Top 12, I think, done by somebody who has Twitter handle that involved Vol Edits or something like that. Here's what, and we've got all the video here of Darnell Washington. One thing that we didn't get in our online chatter is, man, he was at Paradise Camp in Miami last weekend, and there's one, Brandon, where he's making a catch, and it looks like the elevator stopped at the 11th floor, and Darnell goes all the way up to the roof by the helipad or whatever, and picks and makes a tremendous catch in the end zone. We dropped that in on the Dog Nation forum recently. If you hadn't seen it, man, Darnell Washington looks like a guy that could go up and get anything.
All right, name number 6 top targets of the class of 2020. We just showed you Darnell Washington, another tight end out of Las Vegas. Who is next? That name number 6. All right. How about Washington was number 6. Andrew Raym now number 7 at a Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. We'll learn more about Raym in just a moment as a part of our Real Talk with our buddy Mike Johnson, who you all know and love. fun to think about what Andrew Raym might be bringing to the table here for Georgia. Seemed to love his UGA visit, but he was at Michigan most recently on his official visit there. Any kind of update you want to provide us on Raym here, who's getting close to making his decision?
I would think, and Raym's a guy that won't be there, unfortunately, at the opening for those 3 days on July 1, 2, 3. But I think Raym's down. Obviously, he's already told us that he's down to Oklahoma, Georgia, and Michigan. I would think if I had to put a Coca-Cola on it, as an old friend used to say, I would think he's probably going to be committed by this time next week, maybe the end of this month, most likely.
All right, looking forward to see where that goes. Let's do a few more of these kind of fast here. The next name after Andrew Raym on our list was an offensive lineman in that spot below him last week, and it still is an offensive lineman again, Cedric Von Prawn, the center out of New Orleans. So you put in the forum at forum.dognation.com, did not get a chance to visit Georgia this past weekend, although some thought that he might. You also see an example of him here getting a chance on video courtesy of Kendall Williams to do some of the work that has made Von Prawn such an attractive recruit thus far, a guy who plays that interior offensive line position with a real brute physicality.
Nation's number 3 center. It looks like to me he's recently visited Alabama and Texas A&M. I don't think he'll do a lot of the business of his recruiting during the season. Be interesting if he gets back to Georgia in late July as well for that big event. Nation's number 3 center, you saw that right there. I think
so. Alabama offers offensive linemen other than just favors to 5-star running backs.
Other than just favors, this guy's really good.
I'm kidding.
Von Prawn's really good. You hear things about family in the Metro Atlanta area already. More family moving to Georgia potentially with Von Prawn. Georgia was the first SEC school to offer this big man right here, and I think the schools in this are Georgia, Alabama, Georgia, Alabama, Oklahoma, Texas A&M, and LSU. I think those are the schools that are showing up here for Cedric Von Prawn.
All right, let's keep it going. Next name on our list, we just showed you a pair of offensive linemen, too, that are certainly developing a lot of curiosity. And, ooh, how about this? A debut in the top 10 for a 4-star linebacker, Noah Sewell from St. George, Utah. The Polynesian young man getting a chance to check in on the top targets list here. Love a little top target shakeup, and with Sewell, that is his top. That's a shakeup, right? He wasn't in this spot last week.
No, we have 2 new guys in the top 10 this week.
Exciting.
So you look at that right there, folks, and I'm just going to put this very bluntly, very simply. 6'2", 260-ish. Devin White was 260 in high school, folks. Don't get all crazy about that one.
260 is too big for some people.
Everybody was wondering about that. He slimmed down just fine. Georgia's weight program, if that is the move for Mr. Sewell, will be able to take care of that. But I'm going to say this very simply. If Noah Sewell reaches his potential in Georgia, he has the ability to jump a lot of those highly rated guys in the 2019 recruiting class and maybe even the 2018.
How about Ilian Jolly on YouTube, who says Noah Sewell is the best linebacker in the class if he leans up, and slimming down a little bit when you're in a college nutrition program is not that hard to do. But how about Ilian's evaluation here that he likes, or that Ilian likes Sewell better than the Justin Flows, better than some of the other names that are out there? That's pretty high praise from a YouTube commenter on Noah Sewell.
I like that. I would probably agree with a lot of that as long as we're talking about inside linebackers, because, Sewell's really light on his feet. He's physical. I think he's got like 4 or 5 brothers or cousins that are already playing major college football. Mm-hmm. But if we're talking outside linebacker, I got to throw Mikhail Sherman in that mix as well. He's a really rare talent. Already committed to Georgia, been committed to Georgia.
Well, I think the commenter was specifically limiting this to just inside linebackers.
Inside backers,
I think that was the limit there. I know that Sherman could do either one, but I think Sherman probably thinks of himself more as an outside linebacker, probably, right?
Definitely an outside linebacker, especially with that 4.5 speed.
All right, let me keep going here. Number 10 on the list. Jacoby Cowan's not new. Cowan's been in the top 10 before.
Cowan was last week's top 10. I'm looking at the other parts of it too.
Okay, so Jacoby Cowan in that top 10, and you want to offer us an update here on Cowan? I know recently had been at Ohio State, out of that state of North Carolina. What do we need to know right now about Cowan?
Cowan's at the opening. I'll be able to talk to him, get some pictures to him, get some film of him this week out in Texas. 6'6" almost now, 277. I think Trey Scott has been recruiting him about as long as Brandon has been hating the Gators.
That's good to know. All right, now the next graphic I'm about to show you is not the Athens-Clarke County phone book. It is instead all the other names that Jeff thinks we should still be considering in terms of top targets for Georgia. So see if you can spot anyone's name who doesn't make the close cut here. Although I do see at least one name. Xavier Alford is new here. Don Chaney Jr., the Miami commit, is, I believe, new for us on here. Jeff, the floor is yours. Tell us what you want us to know here. Interesting to see two guys committed elsewhere on this list. What do you want us to know about all of this?
See, a lot of things will get figured out once Georgia identifies its remaining two defensive back potential slots for this class. Obviously, Ringo has one until the cows come home in this class because he's that valued of a prospect. But then it's like Kimber and Ringo could potentially wind up number 1 and number 2 corners in the country when all's said and done, or at least number 1, number 3, something like that. And then you got a bunch of guys that would be a safety or a nickel for Georgia. That's Darian Green-Warren. He'll be at the opening. You see guys like Xavier Alford, Chris Thompson Jr., Avante Williams. He will also be at the opening as well. You got the defensive lineman there. You've got Jay Hardy in there. You've got Zacchaeus Walker in there. And then you got the running back thoughts or the running back understudies for that position, Don Chaney Jr., Tank Bigsby, Marshawn Lloyd, who will also be there at the opening as well. So you got a lot of names, but we did shrink this one down a little bit because A.J. Henning left the pool of the Athens-Clarke County phone book. As Brandon would like to say, Cory Wren left the pool of the Clarke County phone book as well. So it's trimming down. And remember, 14 public commits. I think they're only going to get to 24. So amongst those 10 top targets and then those names right there, Georgia's going to have to hit on at least 60% of those names to fill out the class.
Get grilling with fresh flavors all summer long at your local Kroger. We got everything you need for those summer barbecues and cookouts. I'm talking about meats, chips, sides, everything in between. Check that out at a Kroger close to you. All right, speaking of one of the guys who made our top targets list today on Before the Hedges presented by Kroger, how about a closer, a little deeper look at 4-star offensive lineman Andrew Raym? Last week, Jeff Sintel, or I guess it was earlier this week, all these days kind of run together. Earlier this week, Jeff Sintel had a chance to sit down with our buddy, the former SEC All-American Mike Johnson. Mike was able to kind of dive deep in on the Raym film. He talked about what he liked about this guy that Georgia fans would certainly love to see a part of the 2020 class. Here is Mike Johnson, Jeff Sintel on the subject of Andrew Raym. Hope you enjoy this edition of Real Talk here on Before the Hedges, presented by Kroger.
All right, guys, another edition here of Real Talk, and we're discussing Andrew Raym, an All-American, nation's number 3 offensive guard prospect. Could play a lot everywhere, but we're going to talk about that right now with Mike Johnson. Andrew Raym, he used to play a little baseball back in the day too. What do you see here out of Andrew Raym out of Oklahoma?
He's one of those guys I like to call a gripper on the offensive line, and you see his ability to get his hands on, and really I think what sticks out the most for me about his film as opposed to a lot of the other ones we've done is foot acceleration. Watch his ability to get up there, and then once he gets up to the second level or gets on some of these guys, he has good grip strength. Like I said, he's a gripper, but then he accelerates the feet better than almost any prospect in the country right now, in my opinion. And you can see it right there. He's able to kind of move his feet downfield. When you have that, you're going to catch some people off guard. You can accelerate so quickly. These defenders are kind of lining up next to him, trying to get off the block, trying to make moves. All the while, his feet are accelerating, and there's really nowhere for them to go. And once he gets his hands on them, well, you can see that he's got a heck of a grip, heck of forearm, upper body strength, and he's going to bury some of these guys.
So Andrew's told me that Sam Pittman sees him as a guy like Isaiah Wynn, a guy that can play some tackle, initially can come in at guard. When you're sizing up a guy like this, can you say he's working at guard here, he's working at tackle here? I think he can play both. What all do you need to see before you start putting that together?
Oh, I think it's tough because, you get sometimes in a pinch and you say, okay, maybe our best athlete needs to be out wide. But if you have a guy with a length, then you want the guy with length to be out wide because of the arm length of a lot of the defensive ends that you will see specifically in SEC play and specifically that Georgia will see all season long. I hate to put a guy in a phone booth. I mean, I'm a guy that, listen, I started at 4 positions, all the offensive line positions other than center. I had quicker feet than a lot of guys. I didn't have a lot of arm length. So you hate to put him in the phone book. He can accelerate his feet like an offensive tackle, but he's got the strength to really move down and really block some of these 330-pound defensive tackles if needed. I think that I hate to even use the term tweener because I think he can do both at a high level. I think sometimes when you say tweener, it means they're not great at either. But I think he can do both at a high level, and he's got a great mixture of, like I said, foot speed and grip strength, and you can use both of those positions inside the offensive line.
Mike, when you talk about that, that's a pro mentality there because you can only have 7 offensive linemen in the league. And,
Absolutely.
And I think adaptability and versatility, those are not dirty words when you're evaluating a guy like this.
There's not at all. And I think that, that's a perception thing where you say, oh, well, this guy, not a left tackle, might be a right tackle. Okay, that's fine. But this guy can still help you at plenty of positions along the offensive line. And Georgia fans know as well as anybody in the country, you have to cross-train these guys. When you do have hiccups, when you do have injuries, when you have to move around a Ben Cleveland, a Cade Mays, some of the guys they've had to move around in the past, you love the versatility. It can't be a knock on a kid coming out of high school specifically. I mean, talk about a 17-year-old kid saying, oh, this guy can play a number of different positions. That is a huge compliment to a kid that's his age and is his stature, that he's going to be able to help you no matter where you line him up at.
So Andrew is out of Oklahoma. He played some baseball, some first base. He even picked up a stolen base along with a lot of bombs last year in the spring. You look at him, and he's a guy that will also enroll early. And Mike, I just want to continue that discussion just a little bit. It used to be you wanted to get your best 8 linemen. Well, now you want to get your best 7, 8 linemen ready to play at an SEC level. It's no longer these are our best 2 tackles, these are our best 3 guards, these are our best 2 guys. I mean, Andrew Raym, I think you used the term a good gripper, good feet, a guy that can get on folks. That's his best trait that you've identified here. What do you think is the next best things you like about Andrew Raym?
Well, first and foremost, he's a guy who obviously understands his role in the offense. And if you do need, if you're going to go to battle with your 7 or 8 guys, I mean, he listen, you see him scoring the touchdown right there. A big fella can move. But I also think you look at it and you say he's a baseball player, he plays a little first base. I played first base when I was in high school. The best offensive line drill I ever did was taking grounders at first base. It's knee bend, it's hip bend, it's moving left, left to right, it's moving side to side. It's really getting able to get down and get leverage on the baseball. Same thing for offensive linemen. I think you can see some of those tools. I mean, you can see right here when he goes out in pass protection, he looks like a guy who could be taking grounders. And, listen, smart kid. He's going to be able to play multiple positions, like you said. And, they're going to get a good one in Athens if he shows up at the front door.
Listen, folks, that's Mike Johnson. Where else on Real Talk are you going to hear about baseball grounders and first basemen and how they relate to projecting offensive linemen in college football? I enjoyed the conversation. I hope you did too. Mike Johnson, Jeff Sintel, Real Talk.
I like Brian Kephart in our YouTube comment section who said, ready, Raym, fire. I think that's probably sums up the feelings of a lot of Georgia fans who'd love to see Andrew Raym pull the trigger on a UGA commitment. A couple other comments I want to get to. I like James Bryan on Facebook who said, if you could go into Oklahoma and pull out a big-time offensive lineman like Andrew Raym, that would be just as big of a recruiting win as getting Clay Webb out of the state of Alabama a year ago. I think that's a pretty good point by James.
Degree of difficulty very high on that. This is a recruitment. Remember, he said Mama would have to get a new yard sign if he ends up choosing Georgia.
Hugh Nash also on Facebook said he likes the versatility that Raym has shown. I know he's told you that he's only played tackle recently, but he's a guy that's believed to be able to play all of those positions, at least 4 of the 5 offensive line positions. And when you see the way that Georgia uses Cade Mays right now, I'm not telling you that Raym is as good as Mays. That's remained to be seen. It also remains to be seen if Raym's going to come to Georgia. But when you see the way that I think that Mays could be, top backup maybe at 4 of the 5 different positions. He and Salyer both can probably play 4 positions. I think that Raym could be another one of those guys that could do all that for you. That is an incredible weapon to have in your arsenal.
Well, Mike Johnson, along the intel that he dropped there on that Real Talk, we had some discussions about Raym, and he was really high on the young man. Not just how the taking grounders at first base would be a great drill for an offensive lineman, but he thought, and it kind of echoed or maybe rubber stamped my opinion on this. I think Raym, should he choose Georgia, might wind up as the 2nd or 3rd best offensive lineman in this class, at least, no matter what the ratings say.
All right, let me do some online chatter here, taking a look at some of the other things that have been said on social media here this week involving UGA recruiting targets, or just names of note to UGA fans who follow the recruiting business here pretty closely. Starting with the name we've talked about before, and I know he's a friend of 5-star linebacker Mikhail Sherman, Darian Green Warren, DGW. Am I okay to call him DGW?
I think so. We're among friends.
DGW dropping his top 6 here. What can you tell us about the finalist here for Darian Green Warren that was recently released?
Another potential Bulldog target out of California. How do you feel about that, man? There might be 5 or 6 Californians
Yeah.
on the Georgia roster in a couple of years.
I
or
guess
so.
my question would be, how serious is it with Darian Green-Warren in Georgia right now?
I think it's pretty serious. I think Georgia's maybe in the top 3, top 4 out of that top 6. I've talked to him a couple of times. He's a guy that had decommitted from Oklahoma, and it was really interesting because Oklahoma got some new defensive coaches, some new defensive philosophies, a new defensive backs coach specifically. And Darian Green-Warren didn't really fit what they were looking for going forward in their room. Now, he's not a prototype corner. He's more 6 feet, 188 or so. Guy that could play the nickel, could play the star really well. Keep watching that. We'll get a good look at him at the opening in Texas as well.
Speaking of getting a good look, let me let you get a good look right now at 4-star tight end Theo Johnson, young man from Canada. That's the sort of first thing people kind of know about him. But there's also a huge level of athleticism behind Johnson's story as well, including this piece of video where you really see Johnson get up and show some pretty impressive verticality here. You can watch this happen right now. I mean, how about that from him? 11 feet 4 inches, is that right?
No, 11-11. That was where it was 2 weeks ago.
Excuse me, 11-11. My gosh, that's almost dunking a 12-foot rim. That's pretty incredible. Is it safe to say, in your opinion, that if you take the athletes, Rick Gilbert and Darnell Washington, out of the discussion and leave it to tight ends, especially the ones that Georgia's been rumored to be maybe in the mix with, of the Jalen Conyers and some of that crew, Theo Johnson, is he the most impressive athlete of that group?
Well, he's a 4.67. He's about 6'5", 240, maybe even 6'6", 240. Look at that. Look at that tweet one more time. That's his strength coach or training skills coach sending that out. Yeah, that equates to his reach is 100 inches. So that's a 43-inch vertical right there, Mr. Adams. But the other thing that just boggles my mind about looking at this tweet is he improved his vertical leap by 7 inches in 2 weeks.
It's amazing.
You remember those strength shoes that looked like they had a platform when we were coming up that would make you dunk in like 2 weeks or something like that?
I actually, not only do I know them, when I was in high school, I used them. And let me tell you something, they didn't work. They didn't work.
Well, so whatever he's doing is working, because when you can add 7 inches to a vertical in 2 weeks, that is some bunny hops.
I don't know that's all that impressive. I've added like 8 inches to my waistline the last couple of weeks, so I'm not sure that's all that impressive. I will say this: I would never want a guy like Theo Johnson go to Florida, but with a vertical leap that high, he could even catch some of Felipe Frank's errant passes.
Oh man, you just rolled off 2 of those. Why does this man need to go on vacation? He's still got all this leftover material going.
On a more serious subject, kind of a nice look at Theo Johnson away from the football field here as well. I guess a young girl that he's friends with had a little bit of problem. Apparently some bullying stuff going on there. Theo Johnson stepping up to be a good friend on that. And certainly that's a nice thing to be able to see.
I love it when young men use their athletic platforms for something besides to better themselves or to post great big selfies for likes on Instagram. I've spoken to Theo a couple of times. Theo, his heart is in the very right place.
Speaking of impressive vertical leaps, we showed you one of those from Theo Johnson a moment ago. How about another big-time dunk from Jalen Carter, the guy that we've seen do a windmill before in a game, also kind of in action recently, or at least the video kind of comes to light here recently, of him also throwing down another dunk. Now, a little bit different here. This is not the windmill kind of on what kind of is sort of a release or a snowbird or whatever you want to call it. This is kind of in the flow of the game, in kind of a half-court situation. Do we have Jalen Carter throwing this down? I want to see this one, and I want you to tell me, Jeff, what's more impressive. The open court windmill, which we've seen before, or the kind of in traffic, off the dribble, one hand thing here. Yeah, let's watch this here with Jalen Carter going up off one leg and sending it in. Which of these 2 dunks from Carter do you like best? The most recent or the one we've seen before?
Clearly this one. My Gatorade Slam Dunk Contest 50s would be this one, because 1, this is Jalen Carter maybe at his current weight around 280 pounds, and 2, this is recent, and 3, this is him getting checked at half court, picking up his dribble, beating his man off the dribble, and then flushing it for 2 points.
A lot of our commenters like to make fun of me because I like these dunk videos of football players so much, but I'm sorry. That's all you need to know. That guy can play defensive line. He's got some handles, he's got some hops, and all the other things the kids like to say. If you can do that on a basketball floor at his size, I've got zero doubt that you're going to pan out to be a pretty impressive defensive lineman as well. Defensive line is an athletic position for big men, and basketball is a great way to display that. I feel like you learn a lot from who Jalen Carter is as a football player by seeing that level of trained skill in the basketball
Remember
floor.
that old story with Brian Van Gorder and Thomas Davis and that old Georgia staff that they recruited him and offered him and was validated in what they saw on a high school football film by watching him play, by
Thomas
watching
Davis,
him play
one of the names that
basketball.
come to mind there.
So in that right there, again, I'm just going to keep it really simple for you guys. Jalen Carter is going to be a problem for teams at the University of Georgia.
Without a doubt.
Let's do some Wayne's World diddle-doop, 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 diddle-doop sound effect there, guys. Flash forward to 2021, the University of Georgia football program. What if they have 3 or 4 guys like Jordan Davis in the middle of that defense when they're playing big ball games in December? Then pretty warm sight for a guy like this guy right there.
Oh, no doubt about that. All right. Before the show, you sometimes tell us kind of who you want to talk about, what we need to get into, and you mentioned a name, Nathan Priestley. I can say with all candor, I have no idea who this is. I've never heard of this person. I don't know who this is, but this is something that you wanted to bring up in today's show. What is going on with the young man apparently out of the state of California?
Yeah, another California dog. He has announced on his Instagram, I think it's happened a couple of days ago, where Nate Priestley, for folks that follow him on Instagram, he was a 2-star quarterback out of the class of 2019. He was at one time supposed to be taking a preferred walk-on opportunity in North Carolina. Georgia, see the Dwan Mathis situation, maybe availability for the early start of fall camp. Need as many arms in there as possible to practice the way Georgia wants to practice. He is committed to be a preferred walk-on for the University of Georgia. 2-star recruit out of the class of 2019. I think he was the number 145 pro-style quarterback in the country.
So more of a thrower than a runner then.
6'4", 210.
Is that fair to say, more of a thrower than a runner?
Definitely, 6'4", 210. And Mike Bobo in Colorado State had offered him, as well as UNLV and the Montana State program. So this is a depth piece for Georgia in the quarterback room. Big guy, likely going to be a guy that helps out in preferred walk-on slot. Maybe, remember Matthew Downing last year? A type of guy that's going to help Georgia with depth at quarterback and practice reps.
So we're about to transition to our weekly six-pack with your trivia questions. I will give you a trivia question before we get there. Can you name at least one quarterback who's played at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas?
Randall Cunningham.
Do you know who his backup was while he was there?
Ooh, a quarterback. The backup. I don't know this one.
ESPN personality Kenny Mayne.
Kenny Mayne was the backup quarterback.
Backup quarterback to Randall Cunningham at UNLV.
There you go, Brandon.
And with that, my work as a trivia writer is done. The floor is yours for the weekly six-pack.
It would have to be a broadcaster you would know trivia about, probably. Moving forward, let's crack open our six-pack this week, Brandon. I think you might be doing some of those next week on the beach somewhere that will not be named.
You never know. You never know.
Our first one, and we're going to talk about this week, Brandon, is I was watching the frequency of Georgia commitments over the last 2 weeks. And I thought to myself, is this one of the bigger runs that Georgia has had under Kirby Smart? Is this normal for June? Is it not normal for June?
Okay.
We're going to look at these questions, and we're going to learn a lot about the timing and frequency of when Georgia adds its commitments.
Can I do one thing before you do the trivia question? I apologize, I don't typically do this, but a pretty good question in the Facebook comment section. When we say preferred walk-on, what does that mean?
It means you come in, you're not on scholarship.
Well, we know that, but what's the preferred part?
Yeah, it means you come in advance of the regular walk-ons that have to show up on the first day of class. You're there for the beginning of fall camp. You're going to have access to the training table. Georgia can only take a certain amount of preferred walk-ons every year. That just means you have a better shot than Johnny off the street to get playing time or to get reps and have a chance to compete for playing time in the program.
Can I give you also a comment here from the great Troy Sadowski, a terrific former tight end for UGA, former All-American, who says, when it comes to preferred walk-on, it's an athlete that's not been noticed or taken seriously by recruiters. In some instances, a college coach or recruiter may designate the athlete as a preferred walk-on during the scouting process. In this situation, the athlete's assured a spot on the team, but the coach is unable or unwilling to offer a scholarship. That's a great description from Troy. It's always good to have him checking in on the program.
And what it really looks like is it guys that are big enough to draw maybe Division I AA, FCS type offers, Furman, Wofford, Georgia Southern, but maybe not good enough to go to a Power 5 like Georgia. This is a chance for them. A lot of these young men, they're not thinking football. They're thinking education, degree, and being a part of a football program when they make this move.
Six-pack belongs to you, sir.
All right. Question number one, Brandon. How many months since Kirby Smart became the head coach in December of 2015, have the Bulldogs gone without a single stinking commitment?
This is going to be one of those days, isn't it?
What does it feel like for you there, sir?
How many months since Kirby Smart became head coach have the Bulldogs gone without a commitment?
4 months.
Can I see the choices one more time, Connor, if you don't mind? 2, 1, 4, or 7. He has been on the job coming up on 48 months. Is that right? A little less than 48 months. I'll say C4.
C4.
I'll say C4, and that is a wild guess. That is just reaching for a guess out of the ether. Charles Felder says B. James Bryant says D7. Bill Kelly says 7. Winston Mock says he thinks it's 2. Chadwick Ivory says C. I forgot which letter I even selected, but I think it's whatever the third most is. 4.
So it's
something like
43 months when you count up all of them in 2019. We have given Brandon a chance to answer. We have given Facebook a chance to answer. We have had YouTube a chance to answer.
The Shadow Assassin says he's taking the L on this one.
And Connor, I will give you and that buzzer or bell a chance to answer this question for Brandon as well.
All right, there you go. There you go.
See, they've only 4 times. And Georgia, they're on a hot streak. Look at that red numbers right there. Georgia has now picked up a commitment in 12 of the last 13 months under Kirby Smart.
Now, there was that weird flurry in the summer leading into the 2018, which would have been the summer of 2017, when they took a bunch of commits from guys that one of them's playing at Wisconsin now, one's playing at wherever now.
And Windsor, Virginia Tech.
Yeah, they had quite a run there for a while with guys that ended up not signing in Georgia. But, hey, listen, you do what you got to do, I guess.
Those were in the early days when Georgia wasn't recruiting guys from California and Arizona and Nevada and everything else like that, and Utah.
Right, for sure. All right, very interesting stuff. No. James Bryant says he is surprised, though. James Crump says he's 1 for 1, so is Ro Hawkins as well. So Thomas Dennis as well. So good job, those of you who are getting this one right.
Brandon is 1 for 1, and some folks have reached out to me and they've said, you don't do a good job of letting me know how Brandon's doing.
Okay, we need to do a score. Maybe we should do that.
We got
just
Brandon.
One more graphic for Connor to have to keep up with during the show is my running tally of scores on this.
So Brandon is 1 for 1. That's like Luke Jackson and his latest save opportunities for the Atlanta Braves.
Hold on. I'll try to help out.
We got to crack. He's about to go on vacation, but look at it. He's doing some creative work right now.
All right, here you go. Tally mark.
Number 2.
Can y'all see this? There's a tally mark for me having gotten that one.
Look at that. We're official now. How long has it been since Georgia went a whole month without a commitment? 21 months, 10 months,
well, you
16
gave this
months.
One away. It's 10 months. You said they got a commitment like 11 of the last 12 months. So it's B, 10 months. You just gave it away.
No, 12 out of the last 13 months. That was my thing.
Well, still, whatever it is, you gave it away. It's B, 10. There you go. Thank you, Connor.
This is the bingo space for Brandon and everybody this week.
All right, hold on. There's 2 tally marks on
2 for Brandon. All right, smart guy. Let's go to number 3. Quick and furious. Pick up the pace. Which month has proved to be the most popular month in Kirby Smart history for Georgia commitments?
I actually like this question. I think this is a fun question. So feel free to finish reading it, but I think it's a fun question.
A, December. Smart folks will start thinking about early signing period there.
Well, we haven't had that many of those yet, though.
B, February. They'll start thinking about the traditional signing period. June is when people will start thinking about summer and camp evaluations, and guys are either locked in or they're not because Georgia was all in on them. January is the month that leads up to it's going to have those All-American games. It's going to have the Under Armour. It's going to have the Army All-American, which is now the All-American Bowl. And then it's also going to have right before the old school signing period, or then July, which is basically the same premise as June.
Okay. I will say that I like this question, and I really want to get it right, but I'm not sure I can. I know we're running low on time, but let me try to take some time to decipher this. So we've had 2 recruiting cycles with just a February signing day. We've had 2 recruiting cycles that offer February and a December signing day. So that would lead you to believe that February has a chance to have the most. However, in a year like 2017, Georgia had done a lot of work before signing day. And in 2016, Georgia left a lot of meat on the bone come signing day, just to be completely frank with you. So do you say February here? December of 2018, they also cleaned up a pretty good bit. at the risk of just going too long on this, I'm going to say either June or February. I really want to get this right.
So look, you got any help from your Facebook crowd?
People always give the letter. I never know what letter anything is. James Crump gave E. I didn't even know there were 5 choices. Everybody's giving letters. Darren Johnson gives an A. Tram Dickerson says A, B, A. Which one was A? Was that December? Because Tram feels like he really knows that one.
December.
George says he thinks it's C on YouTube. I don't think it's December. I think it's either February or it's not January. It's either February or June.
Make a choice.
February. B.
B, final answer for February. Connor, is he getting buzzed? Is he putting a tally mark up? What's he doing here?
Dadgummit.
This is an asterisk question, though, as the Bulldogs have had 5 cycles to tally up commits going back to December of 2015. They've had 5 cycles where they had 1 month in December, Kirby Smart's
Well, hold on, you can't count December of 2015 as a part of Kirby Smart's tenure. He got hired.
He was hired in December of 2015. Remember Richard LeCount?
Yeah, that's probably
signed
true.
up.
Yeah,
Breon
true.
Dixon signed up.
Yeah, that's true.
They got commitments to Kirby Smart in December of 2015.
What was second?
Oh, I can't tell you that right now, sir. We've got more. We got more.
Okay.
We got more meat on the bone of our six-pack.
So
rating.
for those of you who are scoring at home, I don't get to add a third tally mark here. Memphis Dog says I took too long on answering that. That's probably true.
Okay,
That's probably true.
Next one, moving on. The next question of our six-pack, this is number 4. Which month produces the most commitments on the average at Georgia under Coach Kirby Smart? June, July, or February?
For some reason, I'm tempted not to say July. I don't know why. It just feels like June. Maybe I've gotten some earwax on the brain on that. I feel like it's June or February, and I feel like I got to stick to my guns. I'm going to say February unless people just say that I'm wrong about this. Darren Johnson does say C. I'm going to say February here. Although Charles Felder, who's a typically pretty smart guy, says July. For some reason, I don't think it's July. Jimmy Guthrie says June. I'm going to go C, February. I'm sticking to my guns. C, February.
C, February. All right, Facebook has rendered its words. YouTube has rendered its words. And I'm going to let the final arbiter, which is the buzzer of the bell, determine whether Brandon is buzzing through this six-pack or not.
God damn it. So July, the one that I didn't think.
Can we give him one more because he really wanted to get this one right?
Yeah, listen, I'm disappointed. Sorry, y'all. That's disappointing.
Georgia picks up an average of 5.7 commits every July.
That's disappointing.
Under Kirby Smart.
Disappointing. You know what? Should have done better on that one. I actually really like that question.
I want you folks to know,
I really liked that series of questions.
what's happening with Georgia? When should they expect them? When they should not? Is this a good month? Is this a bad month? Number 5 will shed some light on that latter topic right there.
Darren Johnson's got 3 of 4 thus far. Darren, that's pretty good. I've only got 2 of 4.
Still batting 500. Number 5. Which month has been the worst for securing public commitments in the Kirby Smart era?
Okay.
These are the ones where Brandon's like, oh my gosh, it's been so long. Or that thread, what's wrong with Georgia?
Sure.
Georgia recruiting pops up on the Dog Nation forum. Simple question here. This is the months where Georgia has had the fewest commitments so far in the Kirby Smart era. March, you think about that. Who's going to commit right after after potentially the National Signing Day or the last chance to sign? September, November, October.
So it shouldn't matter, but it drives me crazy that you didn't put these months in chronological order. That drives me insane. But it shouldn't matter. I'm going to say March. September feels like it could be a pretty good answer too, but I'm going to say March.
What is Facebook telling you right now?
They always give the letters. Tram Dickerson gives D. I think there's only 3 choices, weren't there? No, there were 4. Memphis Dog says A. Robbie McCullough says A. Josh Pline says March. I feel like March is the answer. I'm going to go March. Unless it's like March of 20 whatever for the following year's recruiting cycle. Maybe you got some of that kind of stuff. I'm gonna say March.
Braden's going to say March.
Yeah.
Facebook, YouTube, get your words
I like
in.
Jeff Sanders who says the answer is March because it seems like every March I'm saying, come on, Kirby, get going here a little bit. Ryan Elwert also says March. Ryan, thanks for chiming in. I think it's March.
These are some low months. I think the staff is busy on evaluation and other things during a lot of the months that are our finalists right here. And I think this question right here shows you a lot about how the Georgia football program goes about its business. Are you calling your shot? This is a premature tally mark. Connor, let him know whether he has too much hubris for no good.
Are you serious?
September. So that's not the Earth, Wind, and Fire version of September for there. There have been just 4. It includes a goose egg in 2018. This question illustrates how much the program emphasizes the season rather than evaluations or commitments under SMART.
How many do they have in March?
6.
All right.
Close.
Honestly, I don't mind these questions. A lot of times I criticize the questions. These are actually pretty good questions. I'm just not getting them right.
What are you doing with that tally mark over there?
I gotta figure out how to get rid of it.
We got some white out we can put on that thing.
Hold on, I gotta figure out how to get rid of it.
You're gonna save that one for later.
There you
He's
go.
got 2.
I'm gonna just fold it over.
So Brandon is currently 2 for 5.
James Kennedy says he nailed it. Good job. Benjamin Esser's 4 of 5 thus far.
Wow.
Although, truthfully, how would we really know?
6-pack.
I'm kidding. I take you through.
Our last one usually should be the best one. What is the record for most commitments in a single month under Coach Kirby Smart?
I don't know. At this point in time, I'm just grasping at straws.
So if you were 5 for 5, would you be locked in right now? Would you be like Jake Fromm on a third and 4?
I'm gonna say it's A7. I'm gonna say A7.
Looking at again, we got A7, B12, C9, or D13.
At this point, everything's come unglued. Hashim Spikes agrees with me, though. So does Darren Johnson. And Darren a minute ago said he's gotten like all of these right. Okay, YouTube, Crystal Christie, Nick BR01, Memphis Dog, RT367. They're all saying A. I feel like I'm in good company. Georgia hadn't got 12 commitments in 1 month before. I'm going to say it's A7. Uncle Lou's TV says A. I'm going to say that's what it is.
Brandon, a swing and a miss. They had 9 in December of 2017, including
That's enough of the buzzer.
including 6 in a single day on the first ever early signing day. Now let's talk about that day for just 1 minute.
Yeah.
That was Channing Tindall.
Yep.
That was Brenton Cox. That was Cade Mays. That was Quay Walker. That was Jamari Sawyer.
Yep.
And Channing Tindall was like, whoa, 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 whoa. Everybody else is getting in on this Georgia train. Let me do this as well.
Yeah.
Never forget that day. I'm like pulling over off the side of the road when I get word that Georgia's going to get a commitment in a little bit, and I got to write that story up. Right there, 6 in a single day. You know what else is interesting about that, Brandon? The very next day, Luke Ford was like,
Yeah.
why not?
Yeah.
That, folks, when you want to talk about the greatest single recruiting day in Georgia history so far under Kirby Smart, that's that day.
Anthony Spano on YouTube says Brandon's so salty. I'm really not. I actually like those questions. I'm just disappointed I didn't do better. There's nothing wrong with those questions, though. Those are actually pretty fun.
So that day, what do you remember about that? At one point, did you say, all right, Kirby, I'm good. That's enough. I got enough.
I'll tell you exactly what I remember. I went to see Star Wars after some of our shows that like late evening, and when I got out of the movie, I found out that Nadab Joseph had come in too.
Yeah, Nadab Joseph as well.
Of course, R.I.P. and peace to Nadab Joseph in the Georgia uniform, but nonetheless, that was at least it was true at the time.
Yeah, that was a banner day, and you talk about one single day, Georgia picked up that many recruits.
Yeah, no doubt. So that was a good time. It's a good question. I actually like those. All right, now it's your time to ask the questions. Jeff will do his best to answer them. I'll chime in here a little bit too. We'll put 5 minutes on the clock. We'll do a $50 Kroger. How about them groceries gift card for your trouble here as well? We will give that away and have a good time with all of you as we go. Hurry up with your questions and comments right now. So pretty good stuff. Mike D says probably a good thing the BA doesn't have that tally thing up. What do you think? Should the tally marks be a part of this? Maybe I should wait in the future to tally once I hear back on the score. The tally mark's a part of this thing?
So we've got one tally mark there that was forever a forged document for Brandon.
I always kind of want to do like your teacher did in school and have like one of those charts that I just kind of ride on during the show. I've always felt like that'd be kind of a nice addition to our repertoire.
We need to go back to the weather report where we start putting up where things are heating up and where things are cooling off. I like that feature.
Alton McGurk says, do we land Keely Ringo?
What do you think, Brandon, on that?
I say yes.
Georgia, Texas, supposed to come out with a top 5 tomorrow on his 17th birthday.
If I'm doing a mock class, I say yes for Ringo. And I've felt that way for a while. Not inside information, just reading the publicly available information.
look pretty silly if we had him number 1 for a long time and he doesn't end up being a Georgia Bulldog, huh?
Would not be a good look. Charles Geiser says, who's the bigger contributor this season at the wide receiver position? How about Kyrus, Tommy Bush, or Matt Landers? Of those three, who makes the biggest impact?
Ooh, Kyrus. Kyrus Jackson. King Kyrus.
Interesting thing to bring up, although Kyrus was apparently behind D-Rob back at G-Day. Charles Felder says, Jeff, question everyone wants the answer to. What is the highest this 2020 recruiting class can finish in the ranking, in your opinion?
So we wrote about this a little bit on the forum. I'm working on something bigger right now, but Brandon, let me ask you, let me tell you this, riddle you this. If all of a sudden Brandon waved his magic wand on his vacation, his worst nightmare happened, and Georgia added Jordan Birch, Keely Ringo, Kendall Milton, and Arik Gilbert to the class.
And to be clear, that's only my worst nightmare because I'd be, on the beach while it all went down.
If they added all 4 of those guys immediately, and Clemson didn't add anybody, they would have a 1-point edge over Clemson. And finally, they need all 4 of those guys to overtake Clemson for the number 1 class.
That's a pretty good piece of information. What else we got here going on in the Facebook comment section? Stephen Burton says, what's the running back pecking order after DeAndre Swift? Who has the second most yards? Who has the third? And I'll even let you give the fourth if you want to.
I like that question. That's a contender for our How About Them Groceries card right there. I'm gonna go DeAndre, number 2, and this is straight rushing yards, not all-purpose yards or receiving yards or anything.
Rushing yards.
I'm gonna go DeAndre, Harrion, White, Cook, McIntosh.
Jeff Sanders says, are there limits to where JJ can transfer to? I know you've seen the Dog Nation report about him being in the transfer portal. Just given everything that goes on, any thoughts about where you think that Holloman may play his next snap, his next down of football?
Yeah, you start wondering about those SEC rules where they won't allow people to transfer inside the conference when they have charges or anything that has to do with violence on their academic record. Is that the same thing as a campus record with a student judiciary or campus police? I don't see him showing up in the SEC, and it is such a tough story, a bad story, a shocking story on a lot of levels.
Sure.
I just hope that Jeremiah Holloman that I've known for a long time now, make something good and make something positive with the rest of his life come out of this.
Chance Williams recently named Georgia as a finalist. Wendell Taylor wants to know more about that situation. What can you tell us?
Not on our top 10 and not on our Clark County phone book list of folks either. That's simply all we can say there.
Probably worth paying attention to. Santiago Diarn says, Jeff, which player will get the most catches, yards at wide receiver? I predict it will be Pickens, leading receiver this season. That's a big story if it's true.
Most catches is different than most yards in my book.
And that's also a good point. Pickens a better candidate to have most yards, more so than most catches.
Yeah, I would like to if I had to answer that question, the biggest big play receiver for Georgia in 2019, I think that probably can now be George Pickens, but maybe the most volume receiver, I think that might be a guy like Tyler Simmons. It might be a guy like even a Dominic Blaylock, hopefully a Demetrius Roberts.
Darren Johnson says, who starts at defensive end? Malik Herring, David Marshall, or Justin Young?
Marshall. Got to be Marshall. He's the biggest.
What if he's not healthy?
Well, if he's not healthy.
I mean, the problem is when you talk about Marshall right now, you've got to factor in his health one way or another. Not because I know that he isn't healthy, but I certainly don't know that he is.
He's had a long time to recover from that injury last season. Malik Herring's a candidate, though, because I do think Malik Herring is going to find two new levels to his game this year.
Crystal Chrissy, good question on YouTube, says, Jeff, does Georgia take another wide receiver in this recruiting class since the dismissal of J.J. Holloman?
I don't think so. I think you don't get a scholarship. You can't take an extra scholarship. I think the extra receiver that Georgia's looking at right now would be Lawrence Cager. That's a guy that's already in the program, but you can't take an extra guy in this class at wide receiver because you don't get that one back.
Hashim Spike says, how's Notori Johnson looking right now? I saw that video that Scott Sinclair shared not too long ago. Listen, the one thing I can tell you is Notori Johnson's not got a lot of extra weight right now. He looked to be pretty slim and pretty good condition in that video that Sinclair shared not too long ago. Don't know what that means for him as a defensive lineman, but noticeable to the eye.
Well, you're always so humble about these things, Brandon, but if we sent you off next week for a week with Sinclair, what he does with bodies and chiseling guys out, you might be looking like Rock Johnson, Dwayne the Rock Johnson, when you came back from a week in the House of Pain with Scott Sinclair.
So if I can do a people's eyebrow. Not great. Not a great people's eyebrow.
I had to go the route because I knew you would do something wrestling related with that.
All right, can we give our $50 Kroger How About Them Groceries gift card to Crystal Chrissy on YouTube for a question about replacing Holloman as a wide receiver? I thought that was really good. We haven't done the YouTube thing in a while. Crystal, I'm going to send you a message in the comment section here just as soon as we wrap up the show about how you can get in contact with us. And we'll give you that $50 Kroger How About Them Groceries gift card. That sound okay?
Comment section through Facebook or
Through
YouTube?
YouTube.
You can send a comment through YouTube?
I mean, I'm just going to put it in the comment section for everybody else.
Okay, that's right.
Yeah, so there is that on that. Congratulations, Crystal, to you. Jeff, anything you want to say before you're ready to go here? And by the way, there will be a lot of recruiting stuff from Jeff Sintel, including, I think, Before the Hedges next week. Just I won't be on it because I will be on vacation.
Little glimmer of a preview here, guys. If everything works out right with my hotel and my Wi-Fi and my connections, we will go old school a little bit while I'm at the opening, and we will discuss in sort of that Wednesday night live, old school, creaky screen door, kids wailing, dog barking. We'll talk about the opening a couple of times, and I'll fire up Facebook Live, and we'll make sure we have a chance to chat about a lot of things, Georgia opening and everything you want to, and including how many times Brandon's going to eat barbecue on vacation.
It is the ultimate dream for so many of you, a recruiting chat with Jeff on video that doesn't include me interrupting every 5 seconds. So it'll be a blast for everybody next week, but you don't get to enjoy that forever because I will be back the following week to have a good time here in this spot because I couldn't stay gone forever. But I am looking forward to that. I'll say goodbye to all of you right now. See you tomorrow morning at 10 for Dog Nation Daily back here on these same video channels and podcast as well. Jeff, I know you've got a lot of great stuff coming at dognation.com too. Huge thanks to Connor Riley for keeping us on the air today. Y'all have a great day, great week. We'll see you back here again next week. At least Jeff will for Before the Hedges and throughout the week here on Dog Nation on the platforms. Talk to you then, everybody.